And with that, I think we'll get started. So my name is Jack. I work here at onX Hunt. Kind of will be your host for tonight. We have Jeff to my left. Introduce yourself.
On onX Hunt, obviously, as well. Work as the product manager for the Hunt app. So almost all these features that you'll see tonight were either built by the Hunt team or one of the other teams at onX here that focuses on the Hunt app. So it'll be fun.
Well, let's jump into it. First thing I want to do is we're going to jump over to the onX web map. That's the wrong folder here. Here we go. So we're looking at the onX web map. So this is when you go to onxmaps.com, you log in the top right corner, you're brought to a screen that looks like this. So this is a test account that I had set up. So I've got some waypoints here. And one of the things that we've consistently heard from customers is they want a way to better manage and share their waypoints. So a lot of people may be familiar with folders. If you're not, I'll just do a quick rundown. I've got a couple of waypoints here marked on my map. This was one I marked earlier just for this test. If I have a whole bunch of waypoints that I want to organize together, I'm going to put them into a folder. So down here at the bottom, there's a button that says add to folder. So I can select the waypoints I want to add. I just want to do this one right now. I click add to folder. And for right now, I'm going to add that to my elk folder. So people organize their folders a lot of different ways. I do mine by species. So I have a folder for elk waypoints. I have one for waterfowl waypoints, one for deer waypoints. That's how I like to do it. Some people do it by year. So a lot of people will like to have all of their 2020 hunting waypoints in one folder, and then 2021 and 2022, so that you can easily see, especially if you're hunting the same area, so you can easily see, all right, what happened in 2020? What happened in 2021? Where were the deer in 2022? Right, to be able to see that change over time. Other people will do it kind of by hunting area. So they might have, this is our up north deer camp. These are all our tree stands and our tracks and everything. And this is where we antelope hunt out west. And this is where we water. Whatever works for you. The way you can use folders is really kind of endless.
Yep.
There's as many different options as there are onX users. So that's adding things to folders, which is cool. So what I can do now, which is new for this year, is I can go into my content and I can select that elk folder. And you can see I only have 3 waypoints in there. This is a test account. My real life elk folder, I'm at like 186 or something. I mark a ton of waypoints. But I can share this folder with somebody. And I'm showing this on web map right now. You can do it from your phone as well, which is probably how I share most of my waypoints, just because I'm texting them to people. But in here, I can copy this link. So then I can paste that in, a Facebook message if I wanted, or I can paste it in an email, which is what most people would do from web map and email it out to everybody. Hey, here's the elk folder with all the elk waypoints marked for our trip in September. You can mark your camps and mark whatever you want. Whereas last year you had to, if you had 100 waypoints you wanted to share, it was like individually sharing them with somebody. Now you can do it all at once. So that's really slick, especially for people that are hunting in groups, people that are, if you've got a hunting camp and you want to share all the tree stand locations all at once. Really slick way to do that.
Yep.
Sticking on waypoints, another thing that's rather new this year is the ability to show the wind on a waypoint and to be able to show the optimal wind for a waypoint. So I have this waypoint right here that I marked, and this is just a random waypoint. I've never actually been to this spot. So if you're somebody watching from the Missoula area and you think I'm trying to hotspot, I'm not. But when I click on the waypoint, I have this option down here that says waypoint tools. So I can click on that. You see, I've already done it, but if I do it again, Now this kind of pie chart comes up where I can select the best wind direction for this waypoint. So I can just select these and deselect these. Let's say I only want to hunt this stand on a north, northwest, northeast wind. Everything else is not a good wind. I hit apply. And then no matter what way the wind is blowing, it's going to show me on this waypoint when I click on it. And since the wind's a 10-mile-an-hour wind out of the northwest, that's good for this stand. If it were coming out of the south, instead of this being green, it would be shown as red because it's bad. Just helps me kind of tell more easily at a glance what I'm dealing with, what stand, do I want to hunt there or don't I?
Yeah, the white triangles are going to show you what you specifically have set for that waypoint, and then the color indicator is going to give you an update on where the wind is expected for this particular spot. So right now, like you said, northwest, you're good to go. We also have a yellow status, so if the wind was out of the west or some other sort of area that where we may not be sure, we'll show that in yellow. So
right, yeah, that's something I missed. So if it's kind of a so-so wind, it's going to show it as yellow. So it's not necessarily the worst wind, but not exactly what I want either. Another option you can do on this is I can have it just show the current wind. If I just want it to say, what direction is it coming from, I can have it just show me that as well. I prefer to do the optimal wind most of the time. The other cool thing we have is our wind calendar. So this is really cool if you have a lot of waypoints. Like I would do this, if when I'm setting up my map, my personal one, I'm gonna set like every tree stand or blind location that I have for whitetails. And I'm gonna put them all on here. I'm gonna have the optimal wind set for all of them. So that when I pull up this wind calendar, you can see I only have one right here. But if I had 10, you would see 10 of them extending down here. And it's gonna tell me at sunrise what the wind is expected to do, what is expected to do midday, and what is expected at sunset. So I can easily get a glance and see my 10 stands, say, all right, tomorrow morning, I just clicked on Wednesday there. You can go out a full week on this. So let's say tomorrow I head off. I was going to head out to the stand. I can see that this stand, it's going to be a southeast wind, probably not the stand I'm going to go to tomorrow morning. And you can see as I click out different days, that wind direction changes, tells me sunrise, midday, sunset, what the wind is doing. It's not looking like a great week for this stand. Couple evenings at sunset, maybe. So that's just another way when you log into the web map that you can really kind of streamline and save some time when you're deciding where you're going to go hunting. Takes a little bit of forethought. So that's why we're kind of talking about this now. Do this in July, August, September before your season starts. Take the time, if you have 10 stands, it takes you maybe 10 minutes to set up all those optimal winds. And then you're set for the rest of the season. Obviously, if you're adding stands, make sure you do it as you add them. But then when it comes game time in November and you're looking for a good spot to hunt during the rut, you can easily see these are the stands to go to, these are the stands to avoid. Just helps you make that decision a lot easier.
especially if you'll have time to go hunt Thursday evening or whatever the time is that you can get out and hunt. A lot of people are time bound through family or work or whatever, and you can go at a specific time. You can pull this up and you can really quickly see if you had a bunch of stands located on a property, which ones of those might be the best for you to visit at that specific time that you can go hunting. So this also works great for waterfowl blinds. If you want to understand the best winds for decoy spreads and whatnot, it'll also help you with that as well if you're a waterfowl hunter. So
great point.
I use current wind a lot in fields for upland hunting, so we can figure out which the best route may be through the field for the dogs and stuff. So there's a lot of different potential uses for knowing what the wind is before you get to a spot. So
yeah, Yeah, it's kind of like folders. There's many different uses as there are users. One other thing I wanted to touch on that's not brand new. We released it last year, but it's still something that not a lot of people have noticed is in the map, is the Waypoint Radius tool. So this is something you can see again, when I click on the waypoint, I have this tool here that says Waypoint Radius. That's where I can go in and I can set, if I want a 100-yard radius around this waypoint, it's going to draw 100 yards around there. If I want to say I can only shoot my bow 40 yards is my limit for shooting whitetails, and I want to kind of know how far on the map is that, you know, and maybe I'm set up on a field edge and I want to be able to know how far into the field I can shoot, or if I'm within 40 yards of that. A lot of people use it for staying legal, because you can't shoot within X amount of yards of a building or of an occupied dwelling or some other structure. So you can say, I think, what state is it? I know there's one I've heard from customers, it's like 150 yards. You can just plop that right in there. So you're able to see that. Maybe it's, you want to set up stands that aren't too close to each other. Again, a lot of different uses for that. And you can do this on your phone app as well. If you have an iPhone, this will be in there. When you click on the waypoint, you will scroll down a little bit, bring that menu up towards the top of your screen. That's an option. Android is coming soon, right?
Yep, within the next couple weeks for sure. So yeah, we'll get that out. Yeah, if you're in the middle of a goose field at 3 o'clock in the morning and it's pitch dark, but you know there's a farmhouse down the edge, pull this up. You know there's a 300-foot or 300-yard safety zone around a house. So are you 300 yards away? That's another good thing. I use it a lot, especially out here, for looking at access to specific public lands. So areas where a road will end or a trailer start or whatever are typically more crowded. So the further away you get, if you put a bunch of these radius on your map, you can start to see open areas in the map that are at whatever distance you feel comfortable hiking, that are more than that distance away from that access point. And then that'll kind of give you an idea of maybe where to focus some of your attention away from where likely heavy traffic areas will be near those access points, especially on public land.
Yeah, that's a great point. So you can see right there, I just put a waypoint at the end of a road. This maybe isn't the best example because it's a fairly roaded area, but you can mark all the access points to an area, especially if you're going into like wilderness or a less roaded area, and say most people aren't going to hike a mile or 2 miles from the trailhead, and have all those different radiuses. Radii?
Yeah, we'll go with it.
And then if you have a bunch of them kind of around the perimeter, you can find that spot in the middle where none of them cover, whereas more than 2 miles from any trailhead, probably going to be less traffic there.
Yeah. And a lot of times it'll surprise you how spots open up, and some of those spots are actually overlooked by a lot of people. I've even gotten where I'll draw a radius back in away from roads and look for those spots now, because so many people are hiking way back in. Look for those spots in between the road access, a mile or so, and then away from the areas that are 5, 6, 7 miles back that a lot of people seem to be getting to these days. And that's also a pretty good usage of that feature.
So I'm going to move my map over to the Midwest right now to demo a couple different layer categories that we came out with last year. It's kind of during hunting season. So this is really kind of the first full hunting season that we've had both of these categories in there. The first one I want to talk about is the crop distribution layers. Now these were available last year, but we didn't really talk about them a whole lot. But we've pulled in, I think it's like 15 or 19 different crops.
Yeah, 19
different crops. So these are going to be obviously dependent on where you're located and what you're hunting, what is going to be important to you. I'm looking at central Minnesota. This is where I grew up. I know that it's going to be a lot of corn and soybeans. So as I start zooming in here, you can see a few different colors beginning to show. So I have all of the crops turned on right now, all of these different options in my map layers menu. And to be able to tell what I'm looking at, there's a couple different ways. The easiest is just to hover my cursor over the coloration. So I can see that this kind of tan color, brownish color is soybeans. The yellow is corn. If I go down here, there's a wheat field. Over here, there's dry beans. So again, your part of the world, maybe it's alfalfa, maybe it's rice, maybe it's potatoes. If you're on your phone, obviously you can't hover the cursor over. Just clicking on that area will also bring up that card at the bottom and will tell you this is corn. So it's either corn, sweet corn, popcorn, or orange corn. And you can see it was planted that in 2021. So this data is gathered during the growing season, is made available to us after the hunting season in the winter, I think February. So this is last year's crop data. So how is that helpful to me if it's last year? Well, I know in this part of central Minnesota, they're rotating crops just about every year generally. So if this was soybeans last year, pretty good chance it's going to be corn this year. The cornfields, most of the time they're on a 1-to-1 rotation. Sometimes some farmers will do like a 2-to-1, but I'd be willing to bet this is a soybean field this year instead of corn. Out here in Montana, if it was alfalfa last year, it's probably going to be alfalfa this year. That doesn't change too much. So as long as you kind of know the crops and the planting schedule in your part of the country, if it's, wheat, it's wheat and it's wheat and they're not rotating, last year it was planted in wheat, good chance it is this year. Of course, there's some ground truthing that always goes on, but at least it gives you an idea of what's planted in a general area, especially if you're traveling to an area, say you're coming from Minnesota to Montana and you're looking to hunt Hungarian partridges, you're going to want to look for some of those smaller grain fields, wheat fields, things of that nature. So you can kind of find those parts of the state where those crops are planted. Just kind of take some of the guesswork out of that. What am I forgetting on crop data?
That's pretty much it. Yeah, that's pretty much it. It can get a little bit overwhelming, so you can get in and flip individual ones on and off as you are interested in specific crops. It can kind of clutter up the map a little bit if you turn everything on like you just did. But if you know what you're looking for, you can flip that one on, pan around the map, and find exactly what you're looking for.
Yeah, so good point, something I kind of glossed over earlier. Let me back up. So how I got here, I clicked map layers in the top left corner. You have these different categories of layers. I'm gonna click on trees, crops, and cover, and then layer settings for US crop distribution. And you can turn all of these different categories on and off. So if I didn't want to see corn, I just clicked on that corn icon there and you see they went away from the map. I can turn off alfalfa, wheat, winter wheat. So if you say, I just want to see alfalfa, you can turn all these other ones off and then only alfalfa fields would show up on your map, which makes it a little bit easier to find what you're looking for.
Yeah, the one thing probably to point out here too is the way that Jack demoed getting into layers may look a little bit different for some of you on the call. We're in the process of launching a brand new user experience around our layers feature that we think is going to be very well received. We've done away with the layer library. There's no more moving things back and forth. If you've experienced that before, you have a single list of all the layers that exist in the map. You'll see your states there that you can turn on and off if you're elite. And then the exact same categories that Jack showed. So trees, crops, cover, current conditions, land and access, all those things are going to be shown to you in a little bit different interface. And the navigation button on the side of the screen that he showed to access this in the global navigation over there is going to be replaced with a nice big red layers button that's going to show up on the face of your map. So it's kind of hard to miss. And we're in the process of rolling that feature out right now. About half of you have that feature, if statistics are correct. And the rest of you will probably get that within the next couple of days, actually. The response to that for the customers that we've launched it to has been overwhelmingly positive. So we're super excited about that. You will see that in the next few days on both iOS and web. You'll see that in the next couple of weeks on Android. And so it'll be good to go before hunting season. So
Yep, good point. So we're always working on improving things, making things a little bit easier to find. That map layers interface has kind of been a pain point for a while now. So we're hopeful the new one's going to be a lot better. So if your map doesn't look just like this, it's because you have the new interface. So we're hopeful that's helpful. But of course, we're always interested in feedback. So if you do have some feedback, you can always email us, help@onxmaps.com, and our CS team will take that feedback and pass it along to folks like Jeff here.
Yep.
Moving on from crop layers, in the same layer category there, I want to talk about some of our tree species information. So I've moved my map up to northern Minnesota, more of a forested region, to demonstrate this. If you scroll down, you can see we have 7 different kind of land cover layers, for lack of a better term: wetlands, acorn producing oaks, thermal deer cover, deciduous versus coniferous, coniferous tree distribution, deciduous tree distribution, and young aspen forests. So some of these are kind of specific categories. Some of them are more broad. So something like wetlands, I can turn on and you can see this is a fairly wet area. We've broken that up into woody wetlands and herbaceous wetlands. So kind of what it sounds like, herbaceous wetlands is going to be more of your grass type wetlands. The woody wetlands are going to have more tree species, more woody brush, think, willows and alders and things like that. So this part of northern Minnesota I've been to, I can vouch, there's quite a bit of woody wetlands, a lot of tamarack swamps and bogs and things like that in there. The real cool ones, well, that's cool. What I think is real cool is our coniferous tree distribution and deciduous. And kind of like crops, these are broken down into species. So coniferous, we can highlight pines, fir, hemlock, spruce, juniper, larch, tamarack, longleaf pine, and then others, kind of the catch-all category for the ones that aren't broken out specifically there. So just like crop, if I want to know what the coloration means, I just hover my cursor over, or on my phone, I can click. And I can see there's a lot of fir, hemlock, spruce here. If I move over, fir, hemlock, spruce, should have picked a better area that had some pines, larch tamarack, aspen birch, because I've also turned on the deciduous layer. So I'll open up that layer setting. This is probably going to be what a lot of the country is interested in, looking for aspen and birch stands, whether you're hunting elk in Colorado in aspen stands, whether you're hunting grouse in Maine or northern Minnesota, a lot of different species use those aspens. If I'm looking for oaks and hickories, elm, ash, cottonwood, just like crops, like I said, kind of use what's useful to you. And if I say I don't want oak, hickory, oak, gum, cypress, I can turn those off and just see the things that I want to see to help clear my map up. And what's nice here too is, again, if I'm going to an area that I haven't been before, it's kind of tough to tell from the aerial imagery, especially if it's imagery taken during the summer, which is when a lot of aerial imagery is taken. I can see trees, but is that going to be trees with leaves on it that are going to be down when I'm there in the fall? Or is it going to be evergreen trees that are going to be the same when I'm there in the fall? So I can kind of get a sense of what is this country going to look like? Is it going to be a lot more opened up when I'm there? Is it going to be in the winter? Deer need that thermal cover, which is why we have that specific layer there, looking for those areas where they go into those hemlock stands. I think in the Northeast is a big thing, or spruce trees, pine trees, to stay warm, to get into areas where Maybe the snow is not quite so deep because it's kind of protected a little bit to get under there. You can see this is a big spruce stand here in this part of it. And the reason I put that grouse waypoint there is for the young aspen stands layers. So these are aspen stands, I believe it's 15 years or younger. So you're looking for those areas with kind of a higher stem count. Grouse and woodcock hunters know that's the places they like to hang out. And what's cool is I can kind of zoom in. I can see, you know, where all those aspen stands are, but I can also pair this with the coniferous to try to find some of that edgy habitat where maybe, I know growing up, we always found grouse on like a rainy day. We found them in these kind of balsam thickets where they get under those branches to stay dry, to stay out of the rain, but they were never too far from the aspen. I could do the same and turn on some oak layers if they're feeding on acorns, feeding on oaks, to try to find areas where all of that comes together. Again, you can kind of make it what you want. The last one I wanted to touch on, I clicked the wrong button, is the acorn producing oaks. So we get a lot of questions on this. No, we're not necessarily going out and surveying what oaks are dropping acorns right now. There's not really any way for us to know that. What that is showing is oak trees that are capable of producing acorns. So a lot of oak species don't start producing acorns for a number of years until they're mature enough to start dropping those acorns. So this is showing those stands where, yes, these oaks do produce acorns, may or may not be this year, because some oaks produce every year, some it's every 3 years. So there is still some ground truthing that goes on. But again, if you're traveling from out of state or you're traveling to a different part of the state, you can at least have a starting point to say, yep, there are oak trees here. They're mature enough to produce oak or to produce acorns. Chances are something in the region is dropping acorns this year. Lets you kind of cut down on that scouting time necessary, which with gas prices right now is pretty sweet. So you don't have to drive all over looking for oaks. You can kind of zone in on those if that's the kind of hunting you like to do. Anything else I'm forgetting there as far as new tree layers?
I don't think so. Obviously, this will be dependent on the area where you are. So if you're in Tennessee or Georgia, or maybe my home state of North Carolina, you may be interested in a completely different thing. You probably don't care about aspens, probably don't care about hemlocks. You may if you're in the mountains of North Carolina, but you're going to care about acorn producing trees if you're a deer hunter in the fall. You're going to want to find those open areas in the spring for turkey hunting. So there's obviously going to be dependent on you and your situation where you're hunting. That's why you can flip each of these on sort of independently of each other and look at obviously what you know on the ground in your area is going to be important for the kind of hunting that you do. So I think that's a same as the point before, but it's worth reinforcing.
Yeah, so I use the example of Minnesota because that's what I'm familiar with. Don't think that your region is not, it's not useful for you in your region. We've tried to get, the tree species and the crop data that are kind of predominant throughout different regions of the country to cover everybody. So we've got the trees and crops in the southeast, southwest, northeast, wherever you are. We've got some data there that will be useful for you.
Peanuts in Georgia. I mean, so yeah, it's a little bit of everything.
One thing I forgot to put on the outline, but I wanted to talk about is brand new this year, that some people might not have noticed, is we are expanding north of the border. So for the first time ever, I need to not be in 3D mode there, Jack. For the first time ever, we have some data in Canada. So how I turned that on was I went into the layer library and there was a Canada folder there. Again, if you have a different look on your end, it should just be there for you when you open up the My Layers menu. But if I open up Canada, I can turn on hunting units, land data, parcel lines for some provinces and territories. I can turn on, and a lot of this info is the same as what we have in the States: recreation sites, crop distribution, historic wildfires. We have different limited entry, special draw zones, outfitting areas, because Canada it's organized a little bit different than the US is, as far as outfitters having like their specific areas that they can hunt. But if you are planning a trip north of the border and your outfitter has an area, you can kind of pull that up and see, what those boundaries are. And what's really cool is if I get over here, you can see it looks a lot like it does in the States. The private lands are going to be with no coloration over it. And the government lands, a lot of times it's called crown land up there, instead of like national forest. If you click on it, I can see this is in Alberta. Alberta Environment and Parks manages this. It's the Porcupine Hills. This would be, I believe this would be kind of analogous to like a WMA in the States. I got to admit, I'm not an expert on all things Canada, but it's exciting that we're getting things up there. So if you're taking, a lot of people head to Saskatchewan, Alberta for waterfowl hunting. In the fall, they open up before just what any other US state except probably Alaska. If you're going out for a bear hunt, a deer hunt, any of that, we've got some information up there to help get you started. It is important to note this is kind of a beta for this year. So we're not finished. This isn't a, complete polished, hey, we got Canada, where it's a first year step. So as you saw, we don't have parcel information like we do in the States. We have every state, like 98% of all US counties we've got. We only have British Columbia, New Brunswick, Northwest Territories, and Yukon Territories right now. We're trying to get everything. We want to have Ontario, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Quebec, everything. A little bit different deal up in Canada as far as getting that data than it is in the States, but we're working on it and we're hopeful to have more data as time goes by. But at least for this year, if you're heading up to Canada, this is kind of our first foray there. So you have at least the public lands, you've got the different hunting units, and you've got some data to help get you started north of the border there. Anything I'm forgetting on Canada?
We got it covered.
Awesome. One of the things I'm most excited for is our next feature, which is for you Android users. You're able to use our 3D maps on your phones now. So iOS folks, you've had this for a little bit of time now. Android it's a little bit different. You have to kind of develop it separately, develop it for iOS, develop it for Android. We've got it ready to roll for Android right now, and it's really sweet. Mm-hmm. It's awesome 3D maps. It looks pretty much identical to how it does on my computer here. So 3D is still somewhat new on the computer. For those of you that haven't used it, the lower right-hand corner here, I clicked this little button that says HYB for hybrid. Yours may say SAT or topo. And then I can click on this 3D button down here. It says 2D or 3D. Let me share on my phone. I'm on an iPhone here, but I'll still share because the interface looks very similar. So give me one moment to get switched over here. So here I am on my iPhone. Your Android should look nearly identical to this. In the lower right-hand corner, I have that button that says SAT 2D. If I click on that, then click on 3D map, you can see that my map tilts, and I can begin to see some of that 3D information there. I'm using two fingers, kind of in a twisting motion here to spin my map around. And then if I want to change the perspective, kind of the angle of the camera, right? Whether it's more straight down or whether it's more sideways, I use my two fingers, my middle and index. You can use whichever two you like to move, to swipe up and down on my screen. So that's how I'm able to kind of drag that and change it. Let me get settled in here. And you can see I can pull that map down. Now, iPhone, the 3D is admittedly a little bit limited right now. If you're on an Android right now looking at this, it's going to look, for lack of a better term, much better. You can really drill down and get that camera flat. The iPhone's just a little bit limited right now. We are working to make the iPhone experience match the Android experience. So that will be coming eventually. So you iPhone users, you'll be caught up to Android here soon enough. I'm just kind of doing this to demonstrate how to use the 3D for both iPhone and Android folks.
Yeah, we apologize. We have an Android device that we can't get hooked into Zoom for some reason. So
apologies for that.
Yeah, sorry about that. But if you're on an Android device, you can look at it now. It's actually really cool. So
speaking of 3D, we had 3D for web last year, but something new this year is we took some feedback from folks who are in flatter areas. So like I'm back in central Minnesota here just because that's a place I know well. I'm in 3D and you can say, well, great. It looks pretty dang flat, Jack. So 3D doesn't really help me a whole lot. Let me close out of this. Good point, Jeff. If I go into that, we call it the base map button down there in the lower right. And I go to this 3D elevation exaggeration slider. This is for you folks that are in areas that have some topography, have some hills that just don't necessarily show up on our 3D map. You can see as I slide this slider over, that 3D starts to get exaggerated. So if I go all the way over here and zoom in, now it looks a little bit more, almost mountainous, right? Is this exactly what this area looks like? No, it's exaggerated. So why do I want to use this? A distance of elevation in some parts of the country of 10 feet could be the difference between dry ground and being completely underwater. It could be the difference of, hey, there's a little area where the deer are going to walk because it's a little bit flatter, or there's this very minor saddle in between these two hills that, again, might not show up on our regular 3D, but once you exaggerate it, you begin to see that. So again, depends on where you are, how you might use this, depends on what you're hunting. But I can see, look, there's maybe a little saddle going through here. I can tell if it's, more of a north facing slope or a south facing slope. If it's really hot early season, even though it's not a very big slope, they might be hanging out in the shade to stay out of the sun. Things like that. Maybe I'm going to use it for setting my tree stand so that I can try to be more in the shade or whatever. Again, whatever your style of hunting is, whatever you're hunting, it's going to be different than how I might use it. I know I'm forgetting something on 3D exaggeration.
No, I mean, it's pretty much just going to make your highs higher. It's going to make your lows lower. Obviously, if you live in an area that is heavily mountainous, if you're in West Virginia or, Western North Carolina or wherever, Colorado, you can get some pretty weird views because you already have a good exaggeration on your 3D. But for the folks that are in flatter areas, Kansas, Iowa, a lot of the places where I hunted in Eastern North Carolina are perfectly flat, but you can use that tool to see some of the subtle land variations that you wouldn't see if you just looked at the map. So if bucks are cruising the backside of ridges downwind, looking for does, then maybe that is the edge that you need to be able to find those little areas that are not really apparent when you look at the map when it's not exaggerated. So I think this is actually a project that one of our engineers decided just to build on her own, and she demoed in a in a innovation day that we had, and it was super awesome. So we just decided to launch it for everybody. So
here's a good example of what Jeff was talking about. I'm in Kansas here. You can see there's this little draw where if I go to no exaggeration, it doesn't really show up. I might see that, hey, there's a lot of trees here. That gives me an idea that there's maybe some vegetation. This is a creek bottom or something. But when I exaggerate it, I really begin to see, oh, there is some elevation change there. I just clicked the wrong button. There we go. So I can really begin to see, you know, even though this might not be more than a couple of feet, 10 feet, whatever it is, that's enough for a big buck to say, that's where I'm walking, because I'm going to be more hidden and I'm not going to have people flinging arrows and bullets at me, maybe. All right. Moving on from 3D, one final thing I wanted to talk about. We're going to get kind of back to the Rocky Mountains here. Kind of ties in with the 3D and with the, you know, being able to tell elevation, things like that. Wanted to talk about another layer, and that's the slope angle layer. So if I go over to my layer library and click on the slope angle layer, that's in the land and access folder. So if you've got that on your side, if your map, or excuse me, if your layers looks like mine, you might have to go to layer library to turn it on. Other folks, if you have the new interface, it should be in there already for you. So this was another thing we got a lot of kind of requests for, was an easy way to tell what the angle of the slope is. You know, and it's easier than, you can look at a topographic map and kind of look at how closely the lines are stacked together. But there's a lot of research out there that says an elk's probably not going to bed on a slope that's more than, I think they say, like 20 degrees. So if you're saying, I want to find those areas that are less than 20 degrees, I can go to this area, and up in the top here, I've got this scale that shows, you know, green is 5 to 10 degrees, 10 to 15, all the way up to those very, very steep regions. So I can kind of pinpoint, you know, some of those flatter areas, help me find those benches more easily. Help me find, like right in here, we've got a flatter area surrounded by some more steeper areas. Maybe you're going to use this because you're like me and you haven't been hiking enough this summer, and you want to say, I don't want to hike through all of this really steep country. I'm going to go here to find an easier way up there. Again, depends who you are and where you're hunting and what you're hunting. But that's another option there for you. I think this has been out for a little bit now, but it is, you know, this is kind of the first summer going into hunting season, kind of the scouting season right now that we've got this available. So I did want to mention that. And you can, I need to move this picture off my screen. You can't see that, but I can. You can change the opacity, meaning, you know, it kind of obscures my map right now, where all I can see is that coloration. If I want to see some more of the trees, I can kind of turn this down so that it's a little more transparent, a little more see-through to help me when I'm scouting. Anything on slope layer I forgot?
No, I mean, obviously there's a lot of uses to this depending upon where you are. Not to give away all the secrets, but one of the things that I'll do on my map is if I find an area like maybe this one right here that Jack's pointing to, that I don't know where your map is. So this is sort of an eastern facing area. That one might not be exactly right, but if that was the place, you can see that that was an area of less steep slope surrounded by, again, as Jack pointed out, more steep slope. I'll actually go into my content and draw and use the area shape tool and make an outline around that potentially bench. And that way I can save it to my folder for that specific hunt. I'll recognize it on my map without having to turn my slope slope layer on. And now when I'm out in the field and actually have boots out here, I can find that spot and I can look there and see, you know, is there sign of animal activity here? This one faces east, so it's not a great example, but if it was a north facing bench, let's say, it'd be a really appealing spot to try to find on the map. And so I'll outline these spots, and then that way I can save them in my hunt folder. I can click on them, I can navigate to them, I can do all kinds of stuff when I'm out in the field to verify what I think I'm seeing using this tool. So maybe that'll help probably the one other person that would be crazy enough like me to do that. But yeah, that one might come in handy.
Well, I just learned something, so maybe I'm that one other person. That's a good idea. I'm going to steal that for sure. All right, that's all I have. Let's go to some of the user questions. I'm gonna turn my share off here. We'll pull up. How would you use the new features to e-scout areas thoroughly? Possible, give an example. So kind of like what Jeff talked about there, that's one way of how we would use the slope area or the slope angle, excuse me, and then highlight those areas where, you know, if we're elk hunting, I'm gonna look at those north facing slopes that are, maybe I'm just gonna look at less than 20 degrees. Maybe I'm just looking at an area that's flatter than the rest of the country. Maybe I'll turn on the tree species as well, especially if I know that they like to bed in a certain type of tree cover at a certain time of the year. I'm going to turn that on. In Montana, especially as the season goes on, elk tend to kind of migrate towards a lot of private areas as they get chased. I'm going to use the crop layer as well. I actually used crops for a pronghorn hunt last year. I was looking for alfalfa fields in eastern Montana, and I found some alfalfa fields that were right next to public land. So while I couldn't hunt the field itself, I thought, well, they're probably eating there, or there's a good chance they're eating there. You know, find those areas where it's got the pivots and it's just that green circle, and turn on crops and it's alfalfa. And then I was able to hunt the public areas, and I found some antelope, wasn't able to get one in the area I had scouted specifically, but somebody who was a better hunter and had more stalking skills probably could have gotten one.
The other thing I'd say there is if we go back to the spot that you had in Kansas, it takes too long to get there now, but you found that draw using 3D exaggeration where you had a little low area in the middle of some agricultural fields. So that area shape tool will also work when you're in 3D exaggeration mode. So as you're scouting preseason, even if you're in a flat area, use that tool, mark those areas that show up like that on your map. You can put notes in that area shape to remind yourself why you highlighted it. Save it to folders so your content is organized. Put radius around access points, like I mentioned earlier. Group all that stuff together in a folder. Pretty soon, as you're going through an area, you'll have a bunch of content in a specific place, and maybe that's, you know, a private parcel that you have permission to hunt in Tennessee or wherever you are, or it could be a piece of public land that's near you. Use these tools, group the things together, and then have your stuff organized so that then you can start to see on that land where specific terrain features are, where water is, where specific food sources may be, where bedding areas may be. Mark all those on your map, and then when you get boots on the ground to go explore these places, you know, turn your tracker on, for instance. Follow yourself around the property, take notes of where you are. That's kind of how I would go about like building a hunt plan specifically, have all my content organized in a folder around that specific hunt, and use some of these tools that we've shown you tonight. Hope that helps.
Next question. Do you need to be online to use the wind direction tool?
We will store wind values for a period of time, but if you are offline, you saw that wind calendar view had the forecast out for a week. You know, obviously that forecast is going to change over time. If, we trusted the weather folks all the time, that'd be a different world, but they're going to change that forecast every day. So the longer you're offline, the more out of date, I guess, that information is going to be. And so, yeah, to get the best use out of it, it's going to be important to have a signal and be able to connect. We're working on some ways maybe to help with that problem that we won't see right away. But yeah, today it's going to be kind of tough. The longer you're offline, the more out of date all that information is going to be. We will try to save it, but again, it's going to get out of date, and having a cell signal is going to be the ticket to the most accurate that we can show you based on the forecast for that specific spot.
Mm-hmm. So for me, like when I'm whitetail hunting, for example, I have service in the morning, say at my house. I will open up the app. I'll get the most current forecast, the most current data. Let's say I head out the door, I lose service. That it's not going to necessarily update throughout the day, but at least I had it from this morning, and it's probably going to be pretty close for that day. If I'm going out for a week-long trip, I'll have that forecast of what it was when I left. Of course, things can change, but everyone likes to hate on weathermen. They've been getting better. Weather forecasting models better than they were 20 years ago. If you are able to get into some service, open up the app, have it sync up and pull that new data, that should be helpful to you. But like Jeff said, when you don't have any signal, there's just not a way currently for us to pull that data down from the weather station to give you up-to-date information.
Yeah, and the way the supplier that we use for weather, it would be a name that probably all of you on this call would recognize. We are actually pulling the exact forecast for a specific lat long wherever you put that point. So this is not a forecast from some airport that's 30 miles away or whatever. This data that we're getting is forecasted for that exact spot. So that will help some, but again, the longer you don't update that data, the more out of date it's going to be. So what Jack showed earlier in the wind calendar thing, where he showed a couple days where the wind might be good in the morning and bad, or switching it to yellow at lunch and red at night, or vice versa. If you have that information in advance, then you can know that in your stand somewhere around midday, let's say if you're in that stand, you better be checking for the wind, because if it's going to switch and you don't have service, then you're going to want to, you're going to want to be checking the wind anyway, no matter what our app tells you or what anybody's app tells you, frankly. And so you're going to want to be doing that all the time in the stand anyhow. But if you know in advance that it's supposed to switch during some part of the day, then it will help you to remember that that's about the time you need to start checking. And if the wind switches and it gets bad, then maybe you want to think about either switching stands or, going to your kid's soccer game or whatever else it is you have to do. So.
Got a question on some of those map layer categories and who can use them. So everybody saw we had some state map layers in there, and then we have some what you might call just like general categories or nationwide categories. So if you're a person that has a premium onX membership, you get access to one state, whether your state be Idaho or Arkansas or Maine or whatever state you selected. That's what you get with a premium membership. If you bump up to the elite membership, that gets you nationwide plus Canada. I need to figure out that gets you multi-nationwide, international coverage with the elite membership. And so that allows you to turn on those different state layers. They're not all turned on by default. Okay, so you're not going to automatically have all 50 turned on as soon as you go elite. So if you're sure you're elite and you're saying, I only have Tennessee, I want to see Kentucky, depending on where you are kind of in that new interface, you either do what I did on my map and you click on layer library and scroll down to Kentucky and add Kentucky over to my layers. If you're on the new interface, you should be able to just kind of scroll down. You'll see all the states listed there. Click the button for Kentucky, That'll bump it up to the top of your layers menu. And then you're able to open up that folder and turn on the different layers there. The private lands, government lands, and then the hunting units or hunting zones, hunting districts, whatever your state calls them, those will be turned on automatically. If you want to turn on additional ones, you can do that there. Again, we go through all of this in our App 101 webinar. So what I'm actually going to do is, this is unscripted right now. I'm going to drop that link in the chat for our masterclass sign up. So this is for all of our different masterclasses. If you go into the chat right now, I just posted a link there. That's where you can sign up for the App 101. Any of our scouting webinars, we've got them from prairie grouse to mule deer to whitetail coming up. But the App 101 should be the first one that shows up for you. Again, that's next week, August 1st. We got time for a few more questions here. Does slope angle work on offline maps? Good question.
No, I don't believe so, not offline. But I can verify that.
So slope angle, what I would do honestly, because it obscures my map so much, I personally only use slope angle on my computer for like scouting. And now what I'm going to do is Jeff's trick, where I'm going to find those areas, those kind of benchy areas or those saddles that I want to find or that I want to check out when I have boots on the ground, when I'm able to either scout or when I'm actually hunting. And maybe I'll just mark a waypoint on a saddle or on a bench, and I'm going to name it bench or whatever. Or I'm going to draw that area shape around it on my web map. That will all transfer over to your phone automatically. They sync up. So then I have those available because your markups are available for offline use no matter what. Personally, that's what I would do as far as using the slope angle when I'm out in the field, just because, like I said, for me personally, it obscures my map a little bit. And of course, you can turn it on and off. Personally, I like to kind of save some time and just have the waypoint or the area shape marked on my map there. I think we hit just about everything there. I do want to share for the folks that stuck with us, we're doing a little giveaway. So let me put the information up on there, and we'll also share the link in the chat here. So that will get posted. If you're still on, we're giving away, that says 10, we're actually giving away 20 of these onX Hunt bandanas. So these things are actually pretty sweet. They're kind of more of like a microfiber or not a microfiber, forgot what word like a synthetic type material. So they're super nice and soft, great to carry in your pack for if you need to mark a trail, need to mark where you've got some meat stashed. If you want to hang it, hopefully you're packing out a big rack or something, hang it from that so that people can see you to stay safe. Maybe you just want to wear it to keep the sun off you or dust when you're riding the four-wheeler out or something like that. So go to the website listed there. Otherwise, we're having some trouble posting it in the chat right now, so I will post it. Give me a second. So there is the giveaway link again. One more time, I will also post the webinar link in there for everybody. Again, if you're not able to click on the link, you can also go to our website to find all of our masterclass schedule. You can also go to our Instagram page. In our bio, we have the link in there as well. And you can also just Google onX Hunt Masterclasses. We're one of the first one that shows up. With that, I see people in the chat. Looks like people are able to get to the giveaway link, get to the masterclass link. We'll be notifying people sometime tomorrow if they've won. If If you do have any questions, you can always feel free to email help@onxmaps.com. And I hope to see some of you folks next week for the App 101 and for some of our other future webinars.
Can I
So
follow up with a slope angle question?
Jeff's got a follow-up to the
Even-
slope angle question.
Even I can learn something new. So we do save slope angle when you go offline, so you can use that inside of an offline map. So
Perfect. So answer the question from before. Yes, slope angle is available for offline use, so it's there if you need it. And with that, we'll catch everybody on the next one. Thanks.